First dimension classification. The back squat is classified as a closed skill. The performer chooses when to initiate the movement. When performing a back squat, the environment is stable and is not subject to change. The back squat is a discrete skill as it has a distinct beginning and end. For example, the beginning is the initiation of hip flexion and the end is when the hip is extended. The back squat is a motor growth skill as it uses large muscle groups to produce movement. Second dimension classification. Regulatory conditions of a back squat is the length of the bar, the amount of weight, and squat depth. Inertial variability of a back squat include performers' motivation, level of fatigue, and self-confidence on day of performance. During a back squat, the body is stable in motion. Although the body is in motion, the performer stays in the one spot. The bar stays in the same position on the body but moves up and down with body movement.
Step 1. To find feet position, do a couple of jumps to place feet directly under shoulders, then turn toes out 5 degrees. Step 2. Neutral spine. Neutral spine is maintaining the spine's natural curvature. We don't want the spine to be flexed, and we don't want the spine to be extended. Step 3. Pelvic tilt. Pelvic tilt is returning the body to anatomical position. This ensures the hips are not sitting too far back and allows the performer to produce more power. Step 4. Movement phase. During the downward phase of a squat, begin with flexing the hip followed by flexing the knees. This is to be completed in a continuous movement. During the upward phase, extend the knees, then extend the hips in a continuous movement.
The criteria ranks key aspects of the skill on a continuum of 1 to 5, 1 being poor technique and 5 being 100% correct technique. This is an example criteria that can be used. Measurement of performance should be tested before and after the program. The criteria should be used 1 week after the program as a retention test to see whether the novice has learnt the skill well.
Based on this measurement of performance of a novice, we can see that this novice is hunched over and not maintaining neutral spine. This novice would be ranked 1 for neutral spine and chest up. During the movement phase, the novice is flexing both knees and hips at the same time. The novice would be ranked 3 for movement phase. For foot position, this novice would be ranked 1. The novice has a wide stance which is causing knee valgus.
For our participant, we gave them examples of everyday activities which may have been similar to a squat. Example, sitting down into a chair or squatting down to grab something lower down. The participant also told us that they used to play netball a few years back. We used this to explain how during the game she would unconsciously perform squats quite often, such as squatting down before jumping up to catch the netball to create more explosive leg power. To ensure we were correctly transferring this previous knowledge, we took the participant through the exercise multiple times, explaining the similarities and differences between the original squat and the jumping squat action performed in netball. Our participants seemed to be quite intrinsically motivated, meaning it comes from within the learner, as they are striving hard to properly reach their goals of correctly performing the squat. To keep the novice motivated, we took them through a few practice tools. First, we got the participant to perform mental imagery. We got the novice to imagine they were performing the skill, imagining how the body would feel, what the movement should look like, and how the environment would sound and smell. We also took them through the 5-step strategy. First, getting ready physically, emotionally, and mentally. Secondly, mentally imagining the performance, also concentrating on a few critical cues. Then, executing the movement or activity, and finally, evaluating the performance themselves.
Demonstration. The trainer will demonstrate the squat at the beginning approximately 4 times for the learner and then demonstrate throughout the program when necessary. Verbal cues and instructions. Instructions must be kept simple for the learner, but making sure focus is on key elements. The key movements should be identified verbally around the 4th or 5th demonstration, and they should also be identified every so often during the squat of the learner. Knowledge of results. The knowledge of results will come from the ratings on the criteria and the results from the retention tests. Knowledge of performance. The knowledge of performance will also come from the marking criteria, however, not just the number. It will come from the qualitative factors within the criteria to help the athlete to identify what key movements are incorrect. Knowledge of performance will also come from the trainer, where cues will be given such as, you didn't flex your hips first. It would be best to provide this type of feedback in a phased manner, so more frequently in the early stages of learning and gradually reducing the feedback.
When training for this skill, both part and whole practice will be used. The 4-week program will begin with part practice. By beginning with part practice, the learner will be able to develop an understanding of what is required to complete the movement, as well as correct technique for each step of the movement. As the learner becomes more experienced with each step, whole practice will take place. Here are examples of drills that can be used to learn the skill each week. Week 1. In week 1, the athlete will be in the cognitive stage of learning. In week 1, you should focus on finding and maintaining neutral spine and basic movement pattern. In week 1, the athlete requires frequent internal cues and feedback. The hip hinge helps the athlete find neutral spine. The stick should have 3 points of contact on the body at all times: the head, middle point of the shoulders, and top of the glutes. Hanging squat. Hanging squat teaches the basic movement pattern of the squat without weight. By hanging onto the ropes, body weight is no longer a factor of the movement. Week 2. In week 2, the athlete should be in the cognitive stage. In week 2, maintaining neutral spine and movement pattern is put together. There should be a focus on preventing knee valgus in week 2. Swiss ball squat. The Swiss ball sits on the back of the athlete and moves up and down with the body in the natural arch of the spine. You can cue the athlete to prevent knee valgus by putting hands either side of the knees, cueing the athlete to push against your hands. Bodyweight squat. Get an athlete to perform the bodyweight squat with a medium resistance band just above the knees. The resistant band will cause the athlete to push against the band either side to prevent knee valgus. Week 3. In week 3, the athlete will now be moving to the associated stage of learning. Goblet squat. Goblet squat introduces weight to the movement pattern. Now that the athlete can correctly bodyweight squat with correct technique, it is time to introduce weight. With a goblet squat, ensure the athlete's stance is correct. If not, cue to correct. At this stage, feedback is less frequent. Week 4. At week 4, the athlete is in the associative stage. In week 4, we now introduce the full back squat, as the athlete is now competent in the technique and handling weight. During this stage, the athlete is now ready for external cues, such as tear the ground apart, that promotes the athlete to keep their knees apart, and explode through the hips, which promotes the athlete to create power and velocity in the up phase. Distributed practice will be used to learn the skill. 3 30-minute sessions will take place each week for the 4-week program. Distributed practice has been chosen as found by Baddeley and Longman 1978. Frequent and short sessions are optimal for learning. To prevent boredom each week, different variations of a squat has been used. By not performing a back squat every week keeps the learner interested and excited to progress to the next stage. This is an example of a program that can be used.